Hello viewers, welcome back to the Talking Shop channel. We're back in the shop today. We're going to be working on the old forklift motor. It's all back together. Seeing you guys around there. We got it all back together. I got it capped off because when we set it back in the chassis, I don't want anything, until we get the radiator and stuff in, I don't want anything getting in it. So we got the carburetor capped off. I didn't want to detorque them cylinder head studs, but bottom line, that's the best place to get a hold of it, so that's what I ended up doing. We're going to come in here with the cherry picker. We're going to pick it up. We're going to get it off the stand, and we're going to move it to the mobile bench. We're going to set it on the bench, flywheel housing hanging off so we can do the pilot bearing. Our new pilot bearing came in, so we'll get that installed. We'll get the clutch put on, and then we can wheel it out for easy access. I'm actually going to do it outside. I'm going to pick it up with the tractor, and we'll swing around, and we'll drop it back in. Now, I did have to make a new front engine mount. When I removed this engine, the front engine mount was completely gone. There's supposed to be a stud in the bottom of the front housing. The stud was gone. The mount itself was gone. Everything was gone. It was just sitting there, just hanging there. So I got my parts book. I called Clark. That front mount and the stud that is supposed to be in there is no longer serviced. So we had to do a little improvising. So I got a piece of scrap belt down there. I cut a piece out, drilled a hole in it. Best we can do. I don't know what else to do. Can't get it. I could probably hunt around and find something, but for what this is and what we're doing, that's going to work just fine. So I got that made up this morning. There's our new pilot bearing. So yeah, I'm going to get set up with the cherry picker. We'll get her off the stand. We'll get her sitting on the mobile bench here so we can get that clutch and flywheel installed. One thing I didn't anticipate, I hope I can pick it high enough. Otherwise, we might be going on the floor. Now, you guys are on the bench, so you're going to be getting close to the engine here. Nope, not gonna be able to get high enough. Dang it. Well, crap. I suppose I could set some jack stands up and do it. If I had the tractor in here, I could pick it up high enough, but I guess we'll set some jack stands up and we'll just do it off the stool. It ain't gonna be that big a deal. Alright guys, so that's what I come up with. Not ideal. I'd rather have it on the bench, but not that big a deal either. We just got to put the pilot bearing in and the clutch on. So, and some jack stands under the mounts. Stack 4x4s under the front. Actually, the cherry picker can go because when I come in here next, it'll be with the tractor to pick her up. We'll be getting ready, excuse me, to set her in. Beautiful thing. And I did test it on the input shaft. it fits just fine on the input shaft. So that's our pilot bearing. Let's get ready to do our clutch. I don't have a clutch tool for this shaft size, so we're going to have to eyeball it.
We'll look in the book and see if they give us a torque spec.
.30 foot-pounds of spec on that, guys. All right, we're good. She's ready to go back in. I'm gonna get the hood off. I put the hood back on outside. I'm gonna get the hood off. I'll get the tractor around here and we'll get her picked up and get her set back in. All right, guys, I apologize. I did not have the camera going, but I come in with the tractor, picked it up, got it set in, got the motor mount bolts in. We're just working on the transmission now, so I'm gonna take you out for that. I gotta wipe up a little oil mess because I lubed the pilot or the throwout bearing. It slides on a deal on the input shaft of the transmission. There's actually an oil cup for it. But I oiled that up, so I want to clean up the mess there. I cleaned it up and oiled it up. I want to touch up the shaft a little bit with a piece of sandpaper. But then we will see if we can get this transmission set. Okay guys, so what we're doing here is we're going back and forth from the shop and we're getting some different length bolts to try and get this transmission lined up and get it back in. So I typically don't use bolts to suck the two together. When you use bolts and you try and force that transmission up in there instead of just sliding it up in there, you can put strain on the casting. You can actually bust the bell housing, or you can bust the engine bell housing. You can damage the clutch if you try and force it. So I typically don't use bolts. However, when you're working by yourself, you kind of got like a clumsy chain hoist there to hold the transmission. You kind of got to improvise and do what you got to do. So in this instance, you're going to see me use bolts to draw the transmission up tight to the engine bell housing. Now when I do that, like I say, it's not very often I do that. I don't recommend it, but when I do that, I only use hand tools. I don't impact the bolts in and try and force that in. You're going to see me take some bolts out, put some shorter ones in. You'll see me back some off and take some out and then put them in different spots. And all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get that transmission to go up in there nice and square like it should. We do wiggle the transmission a little bit. We will shake the output shaft on the back side to try and turn the input shaft to make sure it's lining up with the clutch as the splines line up and it goes together. I do hook the clutch up and push down on the clutch pedal a few times, so you will see me do that just to make sure nothing's bound up there. But we do eventually get it, so just keep watching. We will get the two back together and we'll continue on with the install. Hello YouTubers, welcome back to the Talking Shop channel. We are in the shop today. Forklift, inside. Transmission's in, engine's in, drive shaft is in. Got the battery just sitting in the battery box. You can see my video series on how we built this. Right now we are working on the wiring. Now there's some stuff that I've got ordered, has not come in yet. We got some gauges and stuff on order. But we can get started with the wiring. We still got a few things to do over here. We got to hook up the throttle, new fuel filter. You know, there's some little piddle things, but I want to get started on routing the battery cables because we are going to have to drill a hole in this new battery box to get our cables out. We're going to go down and around, and we're going to end up at the starter. Both the positive and the negative I'm going to do at the starter. So our starter's down in there. We will probably ground through here. The solenoid is on the bottom side. And then, yeah, so I mean, we can do little things, wire in our coil. Yeah, I just stuck, this is the old center for the old temperature gauge. I just stuck that in there to plug the hole. But yeah, like I say, the gauges and stuff have not come yet, but we can get started on the wiring. Yeah, so let's, I'm going to get my wire cart out here. We'll get some drop lights down, and we'll get some cable cut, and we'll start sweating up some cables. Okay, so we're making headway on the battery cables. I got the positive one, and I got the new, you can't hardly see it because it's down in the bottom of the box, but I've got the ground wire running out to the starter from the one side of our main disconnect here. I just got to run one from here to the negative battery cable. You see me use a crimp tool when I crimped up the positive cable. I used to solder. Soldering works. I like soldering. But you use a lot of solder when you do battery cables, and solder gets expensive. So I bought that crimp tool. It's actually on sale on Amazon. Bought it. This is the first time I used it. It worked fairly well, so I think I'm going to continue to use it. I'm going to get this one here crimped, and then we're going to start on the wiring on the other side. I got to sneak by my tractor here. But I think I'm going to run the wiring harness in the same location here, right behind this bulkhead. We got to do our two here, and we got to wire in our coil, and then we got to run one down to the starter for start, and that'll be it for this side. And I'm just going to run them all together, and we'll make one harness, and we'll scoot right along here. The two from the generator are going to end at the voltage regulator, which is right there, and then we got to pick up, and we got to run one to battery, but we got to run it through the amp meter first. So we got to take off from the voltage regulator and go all the way up to the dash panel where the amp meter is going to be. And then we got to come out of the amp meter, and we got to run all the way back down. We got to end up back here in the battery box for battery hot. So that's where we're going to do that. I could run it down to the starter too, anywhere to pick up battery positive. But so yeah, that's what I'm going to start on today, and we'll make some headway. We're going to switch to a heavier gauge green here because this is the hot side of the coil, so this is carrying current. The other side was the ground side, so I went with a little thinner wire. All right, I'm going to string another section of, we're going to go 14 gauge green for ignition, and that is going to run all the way up to the key switch. Okay, so we've got our blue wire ram, which is our starter wire. That's going to trigger the solenoid on the starter to work, and our green wire is ignition. So now we got to connect the generator to the battery, and that's done right here on the voltage regulator. This is our battery terminal, but we've got to do that through the amp meter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off with a wire here. I'm going to run all the way up to our dash, which is where our amp meter is going to be. And then we're going to come back and we're going to route back, and I'm going to route to the starter. Now I could go into the battery box and get it, but I think I'm just going to go with the starter and pull, that's where we'll connect. So we'll actually be connecting the other end of this cable is where we're going to be hooking to the battery. So what's going to happen is when we start our forklift and our generator starts to charge, we're going to connect the voltage regulator. We'll connect this terminal with this terminal, which is going to send current through the voltage regulator, out the bat terminal, up to the dash, through the amp meter, back out of the amp meter, down into our positive cable on our starter. That's how we're going to connect the generator to the battery. Okay, so there's our white wire. I used white, so red is coming from the voltage regulator, white goes back to battery, down at the starter. I got that all hooked up. I think that's going to be a wrap for today, guys. I'm going to try, I got to get a spark plug. I broke a spark plug off, but I'm going to try and get some gauges and stuff ordered this week. Yeah, we'll be back next week. We will we'll get the gauges in, get those wired in, and then of course we got to put everything in split loom and tie everything down nice, make it look all good and professional. I did find two little items when I was going through my electrical stuff. I found this little guy. This is just a little fuse panel. It's a 6-block fuse panel. We power it off of this one stud here. So I think I'm going to mount that in the battery box, something like that. That will power. We actually need 3. We're going to need power for the gauges. We are going to need power for the strobe light, and we're going to need power for the backup alarm. I also found this little guy. I got a couple of these. I don't know how I come up with these, but this is a accessory relay, so I don't have to buy one of those. We will tuck that down in the battery box like so. But yeah, so there's 2 things I found. I was going through my electrical stuff. We're going to be able to utilize them on the old forklift here. Ain't going to have to buy anything, so we are sitting pretty good. We got the battery cables. That's a major plus or a major milestone. We finished getting this thing wired up, get everything tied up real nice, and then we can start hooking up the throttle, hook up the air cleaner. I got to pick up a new fuel filter. We'll get the fuel filter and the choke cable hooked up. Yeah, we're coming along on it nice. We will see you next week. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time in the shop.